Hello, and welcome to this module on Trojans. Let's see what we'll be covering. We'll start with what is a Trojan, and follow that up with how do we create Trojans, and then look at how we detect Trojans, or how Trojans are detected, as well as the countermeasures that are usually put in place to prevent Trojans from infecting a network. Let's get started. So what is a Trojan? Well, a Trojan is a type of malware that is often disguised as legitimate software. So what do we mean by that? Well, malware is short for malicious software, if you didn't know that. So it is basically software that does something to a system that you don't actually want to do. It has a malicious attempt. And examples of viruses and worms and Trojans. And over time we've called all malicious software viruses, but in the last couple of years we've started breaking them down into subsets. So a Trojan is specifically a piece of malware that is disguised as legitimate software. So what we mean is you'll get an application that looks and acts exactly like it should, but inside the application is actually a piece of malicious code that's been embedded there and then does something covertly in the background. So a Trojan is exactly that, a Trojan horse, just like the Trojan horse from ancient Greek history. So you've got something that acts and does what it's supposed to do, and then you've got a piece of malicious code hiding inside it. Alright, let's move on. So how do we create Trojans? Well, as I mentioned in the previous slide, it's made up of two parts. We have the malicious code, and we have the benign program, and together those make a Trojan. So what kind of malicious code can we use? Well, pretty much anything that you can think of. Here are a few examples. You could execute a remote shell, so you can have remote access to a device without the user knowing about it. You could perhaps infect the device and make it part of a botnet. In other words, part of a larger list of distributed computers that are used in denial of service attacks. You could use it to exfiltrate data if you want to try and get data off a network. You could also use it as ransomware. Ransomware is a very popular malicious code payload these days. And then they can also use it as a destroyer, literally to wipe the system, delete files, and just cause havoc. What sort of benign programs contain Trojans? Well, pretty much anything could, but the ones that always come to mind are games that you download off the internet. In fact, any downloaded software from the internet. As well as generic apps. So people generally try and hide Trojans in apps that we use every day, like Calculator, etc., etc., Notepad, things like that on Windows. And I'll show you examples of that in the demo. And then Microsoft Office documents, they can execute VB script if they're not protected. And in the past, these were often used as the vehicles to deliver Trojans onto a network. And then finally, Adobe Flash. Adobe Flash is multiple vulnerabilities and has been used often as a vehicle to deliver Trojans into a network. So how do we detect Trojans? Well, we look for open ports that aren't supposed to be open on a host. We look for running processes that aren't supposed to be there. We look at registry changes, and that's specifically for Windows environments. We look at any display or device drivers that aren't supposed to be there but have been loaded in memory. We look at which services are running that aren't supposed to be running. And we also generally look at what programs are set to start up when the PC starts up in the startup programs in msconfig, also on Windows. And we look at files and folders, and there's the generic set of Windows files and folders, and look for any changes in those files and folders, because that generally means that there is something untoward sitting in there. Not always, but it's always good to go check your System32 and see if it's changed. And then we also look for any anomalous network activity. And these are the steps that anti-malware, antivirus products actually do. So they actually go and check all these things and make sure that nothing's changed, and if there's anything running that isn't supposed to be running, they alert the user, or they have a database of signatures to compare to, and then look and see that, okay, wait, if port triple fours open, that's not good, because it means that this malware could be running there, and then it goes and looks through all the other stuff. So that's generally how we detect Trojans. As an ethical hacker or penetration tester, it's good to know these things, because you will need to evade them down the line. So it's always good to bear attacks in mind with the countermeasure that you will need to avert down the line. Speaking of countermeasures, what are the countermeasures that IT departments generally put in place? Well, first of all, they monitor email attachments and look for and do malware scanning on mail attachments. They monitor or block instant messaging, because that's a popular way to get malicious code into a network, a secure network. They monitor network traffic for any anomalous connections, any weird IPs that aren't supposed to be there, coming in or going out. They harden servers and services. So in other words, they disable services that aren't needed on a server. So for example, if you're running a file server and it's got IIS or Apache running on it, which is for web services, and you don't need them, they'll disable that service, etc., etc. They block ports. So as a rule, most firewalls allow all outbound ports. But in a secure network, what you want to do is block all ports outbound and only open the ports that need to be let outbound. In that way, you control a lot more, and you prevent Trojans from making connections out onto the internet on unspecified or abnormal port ranges. And we definitely need to patch our systems, because a lot of Trojans take advantage of vulnerabilities in servers and services. And then finally, as always, there is anti-malware that needs to be deployed on hosts, and especially some servers, especially those hosting files or user content. And that pretty much ends this module on Trojans, and we will see you in the demo video in a short while.